physicians say that what he's doing is just not good enough and patience is wearing thin. People in Power's Juliana Rufus reports from the Maldives on its struggle towards democracy.
Malé, the capital of the Maldives. A crowd gathers on the seafront for the release from prison on Maafushi Island of political cartoonist Ahmed Abbas. Friends and family are there. How long has he been in prison for?
Exactly 6 months today.
One day they announced that under such and such law, he's been sentenced to 6 months in jail without trial or anything. Nobody knew it until it came on the website. First, he even saw the sentencing was on a website run by the government party.
Abbas is a member of the political opposition who is seeking to end the 28-year rule of President Mahmoud Abdul Gayoom. He was arrested after he told a newspaper that members of the Maldivian police force should be sought out and made to feel that their beatings result in pain. Amnesty International declared him a prisoner of conscience. Yet the very fact that Abbas felt he could risk voicing the opinion he did is also an indication that change is happening in the Maldives.
As somebody who's been in detention a lot, there's a debate at the moment whether things are actually changing in the Maldives or not. What do you think? Are things changing here?
We are changing it, yes. And we are very proud of it.
So do you think democracy is coming?
Sure.
What is bringing democracy?
It's the people, you know, their attitudes are changing, you know, they are more vibrant, you know, they are more vocal, they are more active, you know. It's forcing the regime to change.
The upmarket tourist resorts of the Maldives are scattered across 1,200 islands. It is easy for the casual visitor to enjoy the sun, sea and sand without being aware of the struggle for democracy underway among the country's 300,000 people. Mohammed Nasheed is chairman of the recently formed Maldivian Democratic Party, or MDP, and has become the most prominent opponent of President Gayoom's regime. We caught up with him on a support-raising visit to London.
You say that the Gayoom government is a dictatorship. What are the characteristics that make it a dictatorship, in your opinion?
Cronyism, the police state, himself being larger than life, portraying himself to be the only person, you know, his palace, his yachts, his retreat, his posters, his pictures, his TV, his radio, his everything. It's the megalomania, the man, the person.
The president, however, insists he is a Democrat.
We have a democracy here because we have regular elections according to our constitution. Members are elected for parliament once every 5 years, and the president is also elected by the people once every 5 years. So the basic principle of democracy is upheld here.
While there is some electoral process, until 2 years ago political parties were banned in the Maldives. Up until now it has been members of parliament who elect the president and then offer their choice to the public in a referendum. Opposing President Gayoom's rule could often lead to imprisonment.
I myself was in solitary confinement for 18 months. And since then, you know, he would release me for a while, and then I would write again, and then he would arrest me again, and then I would write again, and then he would arrest again. I have been charged on more than 32 counts now at different instances during the last 20 years. My police record is not very good, but the police is not very good at.
It was only on the 20th of September 2003 that dissent in the Maldives turned, for the first time, into mass protest. The catalyst was the beating to death by prison guards of Evan Nassim, a 19-year-old serving time in Maafushi prison for using heroin. A riot in the prison ensued, during which the guards shot dead 3 inmates and wounded 17 others. It was when the mother of Evan Nassim, Maria Manika, went to see her son's body in Male Hospital that she unwittingly changed politics in the Maldives forever.
When I arrived, there were some national security people here. I asked them what had happened to Evan. Even then, the officers didn't tell us what had happened to him. They were saying they didn't know anything. When we pulled off the sheet covering him, we saw that he had been brutalized. I knew security officers had beaten him to death.
How did this then turn into an uprising by the people, or a riot, as the police calls it?
People gathered because I screamed and shouted around the hospital. The people who were there saw this and went out and told other people. I called my family, they called their friends, and in about 15 minutes the hospital and the whole area was completely packed.
One of those who arrived outside the hospital was Jennifer Latif, daughter of the founder of the opposition MDP.
And a lot of people, I think, felt that it could be one of them, or their family or friend. And for me personally as well, I have a lot of people I know in jail, and personally I have a lot of family who's been there, and I know the torture that goes on there. For example, my grandfather and great-grandfather were tortured to death by the previous regime. It's so systematic and such a huge part of our history.
Further down the street was Zia Abbas, the estranged nephew of the president. Like 90% of those in Maldivian prisons, Zia is a drug user, which meant that he had friends amongst the dead and wounded in Maafushi.
When I came, I saw a crowd of people here. And there was a platoon of police there. The crowd, it was very hostile. The crowd was throwing stone in the police station.
And the vehicles which were there, they were trying to set fire to it. The computers, the paperwork, everything was burnt outside, and they were just trashing the entire place.
Suddenly the APC comes, and the crowd is going back. And I'm saying, no, come. Why are you scared? I said, shoot me, no, shoot me. My good friend Amin has been shot dead in the head, you know. Discrimination, shooting in jail, so shoot me.
From the police station over there, the people moved, I think 200 to 500 people, all like young men, and went straight onto that road where there are more police stations, and they started attacking every police station, every government, like places where a lot of injustices have been done, like the High Court. But most of the shop owners and hotel owners actually fed them free. This is how connected people were that day. I mean, not everybody had the courage to come out, but everybody wanted this.
The public is just watching, you know. They're not scared. They're not going to get hurt. We're not against them. We're angry with the police and the commander-in-chief, like you.
That was the first day in entire history where people actually came out against any of this. There have been many people who've been killed, but nobody is actually voiced out against that kind of brutality except 20 September. For some odd reason, that day was different.
For the first time in the country's history, the president declared a state of emergency. Yet, out of the hundreds arrested, only 6 people were charged for terrorism. Jennifer and Zia were 2 of them. The charges were widely seen as politically motivated.
Why did they focus on you two so much?
He's the nephew of the First Lady. I'm the daughter of the opposition, the founder of MDP. And I think they tried to credibilize whatever happened to me, saying that they had their own blood there as well. The policeman taking pictures.
Who? Where?
But you don't take pictures of people without asking them.
What, this guy is a police guy?
Yeah.
How do you know he's a police guy?
He's just taking pictures of everyone, and you know.
Are you with the police? Why are you taking pictures?
Jennifer was sentenced to 10 years, but was later pardoned.
I'm sorry.
Zia fled to the UK and only recently decided to return. He is due to be sentenced soon.
Why didn't you stay in the UK if you know that you had terrorism charges on your head?
My marriage is in turmoil. I'm divorced, but I have 2 kids. They are not going to come and live with me in UK, you know. So I have to come to them. You know. And I love Maldives, so I didn't want to die any other place, you know.
After her son's death, Mariam, along with many others, became more politically active. She says that it made her a police target and claims that during one arrest she was kicked, beaten and knocked unconscious. She also says that the police told her she was wearing the same handcuffs as her son was when he died, and that they were going to kill her and her entire family. However, despite the police crackdown, other protests followed. Eventually, President Gayoom lifted the ban on political parties and set out a roadmap for reform. These days, the implementation of that roadmap, or lack of it, has become the country's most hotly contested issue.
Side is a country plagued by poverty, people living in squalid conditions, and where the difference between the haves and the have-nots is immense. Juliana Rufus continues her report on the struggle for democracy and equality in the Maldives.
Since the first resorts were built in 1972, tourism has become the mainstay of the Maldives economy. More tourists visit the country each year than there are Maldivians, and this has given the country one of the highest GDPs in South Asia. Together with the Minister for Tourism, Dr. Mahamud Shuge, we visit Sonevagili, one of the country's 87 resorts.
In terms of government revenue and foreign exchange earnings, how much money is generated in the Maldives through tourism?
I think it's about 70% of the foreign revenue that comes into the country comes from tourism. We get approximately about $100 million now from rent, resort rent, and bad taxes.
This is an entry-level villa.
That's right, yeah.
Which means that it's the most basic.
Yeah, I don't want to use that word, but it is, yes.
Entry-level,
yeah,
okay.
Entry-level, yeah.
So how much in dollars do you charge for a villa like this?
Our rack rate for this season is $1,115
per night.
Per night.
There is no corporation tax in the Maldives, so of the $1,115 for this villa, the government will get at the most $56 in revenue. Critics say that such a system leaves big profits for large private businesses, but doesn't benefit the people enough. The fact that some government officials are also involved in the tourism business has led to accusations of a conflict of interests.
So what's the relationship between the government and private business?
I can speak for the tourism sector. It is true, there are some senior businessmen from the tourism sector in the government today. To be more specific, our tours minister is of course a tourism businessman. Our finance minister is also involved in the tourism business. But they did not become business people while in the government. These people have come into the government very recently. And I think it's only beneficial that business people with their experience, those people who have built the tourism industry in the Maldives, are now sitting around the table discussing what economic future policies to bring in. And I think that this is an industry that is for all Maldivians, that will benefit all Maldivians.
The opposition, however, begs to differ. The MDP take us to see the problems of poverty and overcrowding in Male. A third of the country's population, over 100,000 people, live here crammed into 1 square mile, making it the most densely populated city on earth.
Hello. How many people stay in this house?
More than 10.
More than 10?
Yeah.
So, this room, your room, how many people sleep there?
This room, 4 people.
And the little room to my right?
My younger brother and his wife.
And upstairs 6?
Yeah. From the government, they don't provide anything. Today also to bring something. Tomorrow. 1 jota book cellophane, with cellophane.
And are you able to buy that?
No.
You don't have the money?
Yeah.
Do many people in Male live like you?
Yeah, so many.
Ibrahim Zaki used to be a government minister, but quit to join the MDP. Until recently, he was the party president.
You know the corridors that we've just walked down? How many people live along those corridors?
Well, about 50 people lives in those quarters. Every family has a single room to cook, to sleep, and they are with the children. And this is, what is very sad is that while we have such an impressive growth, GDP rate compared to South Asian countries, Maldives people does not enjoy this wealth. I have served in President Gayoom's cabinet for 10 years. And I have been the planning minister for 5 years and the tourism minister for 5 years. I have seen what the government is doing. What I cannot accept is the living standard of the people to be this poor while the leadership lives in wealthy and luxury, life. 10% of the population enjoys 90% of the wealth.
The government says one of the biggest problems they face is the sheer geography of the Maldives. 99% of the country is water. Getting anywhere involves dealing with the sea, and that makes things expensive. We're taken to see the government's biggest social initiative by the Foreign Minister, Dr. Ahmed Shahid. This is Hulhumale, a man-made island built on a submerged reef. It is intended to both ease the overcrowding in Male and draw in people from the less inhabited islands.
What we see here is a planned development of a modern city designed to house some 50,000 residents.
It's the idea of population consolidation. What is that?
Right, simply it means that we're trying to create large population centers where we will achieve greater economies of scale. Right now we have 300,000 people dispersed over 200 islands in very thin population densities, which makes any economic activity prohibitively expensive.
A recent United Nations study showed that because of transportation costs and the need to import everything, building a primary school in the Maldives costs 6 times as much as it does in nearby Sri Lanka.
By bringing people together, you can create better quality education, higher standards of medical care, and even basic social amenities.
Another day, another boat. Maria Didi is a prominent member of the MDP and campaigner for women's rights. She was recently given a Woman of Courage Award by the US State Department. She takes us to Tulisdu Island near Male to show us the flip side of population resettlement. Here, victims of the 2004 tsunami were relocated from another atoll and have been waiting for 2 years for new homes.
They came with the expectation that within 12 months they would be in their own homes. 18 months by the time they get to their own, that's the most that was given as a period for them to be able to move to their own homes. And they still haven't realized their dream to go and live somewhere else. This is where they store their personal stuff because they don't have enough space in their homes.
And that's what they brought with them from the previous island to start a new life here?
Yes.
The government asked for a list of items we lost in the tsunami. We've sent the list several times through the island office, but there's been no compensation.
Yeah. 2 wells for them to use water, and you saw the smell. They're saying it's really horrible what they have to use as water here to clean their body and everything else, for cooking and cleaning. 53 households were promised they would be given good land and all that. While they were negotiating, this was given to the finance minister, and it's for 20 years, that's what he said.
And what's the finance minister doing over there? You say
it's a fish factory.
A fish factory.
There's nothing going on anymore. It's just
so it's not even providing employment.
6 foreigners and a cook.
Oh, this is what's been proposed?
Yeah, 5.
This is the 5th version?
5th map, yes.
So you had 4 others before?
Yeah.
Do you think there will be number 6?
Yeah.
As the MP of Male Atoll, how much power do you have to change these people's lives?
Honestly speaking, as an opposition MP, I can only put pressure on the government and talk to the ministers and question them in Parliament about the claims that they have. They are there in the government even now, and they have the obligation to do these things for the people, whereas we are there in opposition just to be able to talk about these things and bring it to their attention in Parliament.
Arguably, you've got the easier job.
Arguably, we've got a difficult job because we have to come here and we have to listen to these complaints, and we have to take it to those people, and we have to still get elected when we haven't been able to do anything for them. So arguably, we have a more difficult job.
Maria says that much of the poverty in the Maldives could be alleviated if earnings from tourism were more fairly distributed.
We ask in Parliament, where is the money that comes into this country? Because we have more tourists than Maldivians in our country, and it's quite expensive as well, but where is the money? As I told you, hospital donated, anything, island schools donated by different aids, Japanese aids. So where's the money?
Hello, I'm Nick Clark. These are the top stories.
Too late. Juliana Rufus continues her report.
Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency President Ma'mun Abdul Qayyum.
Earlier this year, the Maldives were chosen to host World Press Freedom Day.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a soft spot for journalism. Our press is very free. They can write about anything. They can criticize the government, condemn the government, and put forward all sorts of allegations, unfounded allegations about the government. But all our journalists are now free.
And yet, minutes before the president's speech, this was happening outside.
Last few days there were about 3 or 4 journalists, women journalists arrested, and then they are protesting because of this.
Many of the independent journalists here have been arrested at one time or another. One of them is Amina Najib.
I'm the editor of Minivan Daily, which is the paper that very openly criticizes the government. And we've gone through a lot of harassment and a lot of threats and many, many difficulties.
Did you hear the speech of the president?
No, we walked out just as he came in. I don't believe that he is sincere in giving press freedom to this country. And this speech we have heard over and over and over again, there's nothing new he can say. And I sincerely, truly believe that there's no sincerity in his words.
Since Minivan started 2 years ago, over half of its staff has been faced with prosecution. One of them, Fahala Saeed, is currently serving 25 years for drug dealing.
He was taken there for a police summon, a chit was brought, and he went with the lawyer, and then suddenly the police said, we want to check your body, and when he said that my body can be checked in the presence of the lawyer, the police refused to give him the lawyer. He was shoved into a toilet. 6 policemen charged him from behind and produced these packets of drugs there. This is our guy.
That's President Qayyum.
That's President Qayyum, that's right, and it says it's predators of press freedom.
The poster is from Reporters Without Borders, an international press freedom watchdog. So this looks as if President Qayyum is internationally considered to be one of the presidents in the world that really represses press freedom.
Exactly, and he goes on to say on the International Press Freedom Day that he has a soft corner for journalists.
This is the issue that's out at the moment, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got World Press Freedom Day.
The paper goes this way. Oh, it's Abbas's release.
Do you ever carry any features, any articles that are critical of the MDP?
Yes, we do. We do criticize MDP in this paper also, but at the moment this paper has I wouldn't say has no choice, but is partisan, because we support this party who is fighting for reform and who is fighting to get democracy into this country. I hope and I am very confident that MDP will be ruling this country very soon, and then it is the responsibility of this paper to keep check on MDP.
Hang on.
There are many of my colleagues spend time there.
What is there?
The jail. It's Doolido.
The island is the jail?
Yeah. They call it Alcatraz of the Maldives. Mainly political prisoners would be there.
What did the government take offense to when you were editor?
Right now, maybe it's a warning. There's on the Attorney General's office website, they have listed myself and one of the writers who is now the current editor of Addos as facing charges on calling an article that called the Maldives a police state. So they don't like being called a police state, but I don't think I need to speak on that subject. I think you have footage from this morning, so we'll leave it at that.
Intimidation of the press is alleged to come from the very top of the security forces. We get a rare interview with the Commissioner of Police, Adam Zahir, and ask him about a death threat sent to the dissident journalist Ahmed Musa. Musa left the country for the UK after the 2003 protests and started an anti-government website. DiveoObserver.com is banned and inaccessible in the Maldives, where Musa has become a thorn in the side of the authorities. In 2005, he received an email full of abuse.
The email was traced back by the British police to your wife's email account.
Mm-hmm.
How can that be?
I have questioned everyone at home about this, and everyone says that we know nothing about this. So it's a mystery to me as much mystery to you. I have no answer for that. I don't know.
But you carry no responsibility for this email?
I take no responsibility for that, because I know my wife and my children will not engage in such activities.
We're trying also to understand how much has changed in the country. We witnessed that on World Press Freedom Day, your police force dispersed a very small demonstration of journalists who did nothing but hold up placards for a free press. Why did your police force tell these people to go away?
Well, the police, when there is a gathering, other than that has been prescribed by law, they will always advise them not to do that, disperse and go home.
But these were, how many, 10, 12, not even more than 15 people. They didn't shout, they didn't make noise. All they did was hold up some placards, A4 pieces of paper. Was it necessary to disperse them?
Maybe not, but you see, our country is very new to all this. We are also practicing the newfound freedoms, and therefore all these things will take time. Perhaps it will come a time when we will be able to simply smile at them and go.
But you have been, on repeated occasions, you have been described to us as the most feared man in the country.
I think the newspapers and the various internet services have done their job well. If a population says that, then I would agree, but I will not accept the fact that it is a population that says it. I understand, I have always understood that Commissioner of Police, perhaps in any country, is not the most popular person.
There have been repeated calls for Zahir's ousting by the public, the opposition, and even members of the government.
The Attorney General has gone on record saying that he wants to remove Adam Zahir. Why is Adam Zahir still in his position?
Adam Zahir has not been accused or found guilty of any human rights abuses. He is a man of honor. He does his duty very well, properly.
Many admit there is a greater degree of freedom these days, but there seems to be a battle going on within the authorities between the old guard, people like Adam Zahir, and the more liberal ministers who set out the roadmap for reform. They call themselves the New Maldives, and Dr. Shahid, the foreign minister, is their unofficial spokesman.
Do you get frustrated that the reform process isn't acknowledged enough?
I'm not surprised because those who would want reform will always want more. And I'm encouraged by the fact that there is international spotlight on the Maldives. I'm encouraged by the fact that there's a constant demand to do more. I'm encouraged by the fact that nothing we do ever seems to, kind of say that's enough, because you have to do more. We are the only country in South Asia to have emergent independence without inheriting a modern political system or a legal system. We have to develop it. So the difference now is we no longer want to perhaps mediate democratic concepts through local customs, but we're happy to embrace it fully. Now, I don't think the debate is fully over. A backlash might come, but somebody will say, no, you're going too fast, that you have to respect our local tradition.
In many ways, Dr. Shahid appears closer politically to members of the opposition than he does to some in his own party. Some suspect that President Gayoom has split his cabinet equally between the old and new guard in order to be able to wield the casting vote.
You've got some very reform-minded people, but you've also got some people in government who probably think it's too early to introduce some democratic reforms. How do you decide which side you listen to?
Of course, I know the pulse of the people. I've been here for quite some time, and I feel I know what they want. And now the country is ready for a more liberal form of democracy than we used to have in the past. Because for one thing, we have now a better educational attainment than before. And there's so many young and educated people who have been abroad and who have seen how things take place abroad and the new systems of democracy and government and so forth. So the country is now ready for a new form of democracy.
But others question the amount of time it took the president, after 28 years in power, to decide the people were ready for more democracy.
The President Gayoom, the one good thing he did for this country was the literacy campaign. I think this was in the 80s, and he had a huge success, now getting a very high literacy rate. But that was the time he could have also started on the democracy thing. That was the time when he could have had people read and learn and get to know.
Many believe that the government's roadmap to reform was launched in order to avoid revolution. And many feel that no real reforms have been made as yet.
Come next election, and if there is no constitution, new constitution, we are in for a good fight.
You're threatening the government in some way.
No, I'm not threatening the government. Well, this is always what happens to me. I've been branded as a terrorist many times because of observing what might happen.
As a political journalist, do you think the opposition has a clear agenda? Do they have a party manifesto that they're explaining to the people?
If you ask them, or as I have asked them on occasions, I always get the answer that if we are going to go out public, if we go out public with these things, then Gayoom is going to do it. He's going to steal it and do it and take credit for it. It's not political maturity. Everyone trying to take credit for what is happening while the people are really waiting for change. Change is not happening because the government wants credit for constitution change, opposition wants credit for constitution change, and there is no compromise or middle ground coming out.
Here is the close connection.
Who is not sensitive to the other person's pain, something is wrong.
Mali is so compact that everybody knows everybody. One of the most striking things about party politics here is the close connections between those on both sides of the fence. For instance, President Gayoom attended the same Egyptian school as political cartoonist Ahmed Abbas. Abbas was once close friends with Commissioner of Police Adam Zahir. And Foreign Minister Dr. Shahid is the brother-in-law of opposition MP Maria Didi.
Is there potentially a situation where it is like a family feud over how to bring democracy to this country that runs danger of leaving the people behind?
I wouldn't imagine so. I think people's aspirations are the same. People want to see a more free society, equitable distribution of wealth. And if you aren't able to deliver this, like even if you're in the government, if you're just reform-minded and not able to deliver, then you will be left behind, not the people.
Yet there are signs that parts of the population have given up on the politicking between the MDP and government elite. And this has enabled the emergence of a third force in the politics of this 100% Muslim nation, a more conservative Islam. It is especially strong on the poorer islands.
As freedom of expression increases, so does the religious people who are able to express their views on religion as well. And the more they express such religious views, the more people are becoming aware, and more people are becoming more religiously aware and getting into religion more.
What happens in this country is that although we say this is an Islamic country, the government controls religion. I myself was imprisoned. I was at home, and one day they called me to the police station. They asked me, "Why have you got a beard? Why have you shortened your trousers?" No other questions. They just put me in jail there and then.
He was also taken to jail.
While the Maldives enforce Islamic laws like a ban on alcohol, the government also forbids what it sees as more extreme expressions of Islam.
There is a law that women are not allowed to wear the dress that only shows the eyes.
Yes, because that conceals their character. You don't know who you are talking to, who you are dealing with. So their face should be seen. That is even in Islam, even during the time of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, women used to have bare faces. I mean, women were not, they did not cover their faces. So it's not Islamic to cover your face.
I think what's happening is, you know, people have gone to different countries, different Islamic countries, and studied. The dresses, if you notice, people wear in different Islamic countries are different. And those who've gone to Pakistan, they have embraced this dress and come back. The little veil that, or the scarf everybody's wearing now, I think it's about 4 or 5 years now that you know, people have started putting this in general. So what you just saw, the lady in total black, that's also very new to the country.
We have heard from a number of government ministers that they are worried about the influence of foreign educated imams.
For me, the issue is not the cloth. For me, the issue is some of the attitudes that come with it, especially for women. Because for us in Maldives, we've never had an issue with gender discrimination based on religion.
Can you see a future in the Maldives where Islam-based parties are going to be running the government?
It could happen, but I hope not.
Secondary schools in the Maldives teach in English rather than in the indigenous language, Divehi. Yet increasingly parents are sending their children to schools like this one that teach in Arabic. Here, an additional first-grade class was added this year to cope with the growing demand. The largest of the Islamic parties, Adalat, promises to uphold traditional values whilst promoting social justice and democracy.
And do you think the lack of education provision, especially in the faraway islands, has been holding the Maldives back from achieving democracy?
Yes, and I think a lot hasn't been done in this area, in the faraway islands, in terms of educating the voting public, their voting rights, what that could do to sort of empower them as individuals at the grassroots level. That hasn't been done.
Is there a sense that people have lost faith in politicians and that they feel that religious people have more credibility?
Yes, public has lost a lot of faith in the politicians, and specifically in the transition period, a lot of the reformers have been sort of jumping their sides and taking different positions at different times. That little faith people sort of gained among the politicians seem to have lost in the process. But it's not so much that this is translated among the religious scholars, but everyone believes probably the religious scholars would have a better principle than the politicians.
Many people we've spoken to here, local people, Maldivans, are worried about what they call the emergence of radical Islam.
We also worry about the radical Islam because we are more about the present Islamic context of the Maldives. There's so much extremism in the islands as well, and we at some point had to go to this island and talk to these people about the middle ground, if you like, because we also are not, like in so much fundamentalist extreme parties. We also kind of promote what's existing in the moderate context here.
Of course, what Adalat regard as moderate, others in the Maldives may see as extreme. Liberals here are concerned about the party's recent protests against both the inclusion of women in the judiciary and the proposed lifting of the ban on a female being head of state. As a party for social change, Adalat's key priority is the Maldives' enormous heroin problem. A recent UNICEF report estimates that on some islands over 50% of young people are using drugs. Ali Rashid is a journalist who knows Mali's drug scene well and feels the problem isn't just a social one.
Why do you say the government doesn't want to take on the drug trade for political reasons?
Well, first and foremost, in any country, the most dangerous segment of the society is the youth. And 2-3 generations of youth have been systematically destroyed, I would say, just so that the government can keep them out of politics.
So there's a lack of will to clean it up?
Not only there's a lack of will, there's a sort of motive on their part to maintain the status quo.
Here we meet again with Zia, the president's nephew.
Are you yourself a drugs user?
I'm a drug addict.
And you're addicted now?
To heroin.
Why do you think is there such a big drugs problem here in the Maldives?
Because the authorities or the government don't do anything practical enough to let the people come back into society, the addicts, the victims of this trade. This 40% of Maldivians youth is drug addicts, heroin users. We cannot identify with the government, nor can we identify with MDP. We're lost.
Do you think the government has made any concessions? Has anything been getting better at all?
No, that's for sure. Nothing's been better. Police beat a colleague, a brother of mine recently. He was found dead in the waterfront. They're saying nothing wrong, nobody beat him up, but everybody knows what's happened.
In an eerie repetition of the events that triggered the 2003 riots, the death of another drug user after his arrest this April has created the most recent unrest. Posting up pictures of his corpse has become a form of anonymous protest.
We've just been surrounded by a group of people who've taken us to see these photos here. And just now I'm looking around to interview somebody about it and everybody's disappeared.
On 12th of April, Hussein Salah was taken into detention in Male on drugs charges. The police say they released him the day after his detention, but 2 days later his body was found floating in a harbour yards from the police station. The police say he died from drowning.
So the jail is just there?
Yeah. He was found there.
How deep is this?
I'm not too sure actually, not very deep. I mean, there's never a time when there are waves crashing here either where he would have gotten those injuries unless he tortured himself. And even if he'd fallen or committed suicide, like here there's CCTVs on the other end, on the other side there are TVs as well, so if he'd come along this road, they would have had footage as well.
According to the lawyer for Salah's family, Husnu al-Suud, any CCTV footage of the crucial nights seem to have disappeared. The police dispute the injuries to Salah's body, but fellow prisoners have given statements that they heard him being beaten and saw him, or his body, in the police station hours after he was said to have been released. After a contested autopsy, photos of Salah's corpse have become part of Maldivian politics.
And this position looks like he was still handcuffed at the time of death. And then he was thrown into the sea after actually he died.
So the presumption that you're working on it is that rigor mortis set in whilst he was still in handcuffs, which is why the position of the hands didn't change in the water.
Yeah. So that's what the doctors say. I mean, I've spoken to some doctors and they said like that.
The police have their own interpretation of the photos.
Actually, the hand was up on the water surface, the hand was gone up. Not that like this. It was gone up to the surface level.
It was because he was floating that his hands are in this position?
Like this, you see?
An independent autopsy in Sri Lanka found no evidence of police involvement in Hussein Salah's death, but for a lot of people there were too many unanswered questions and protests flared up once again. The legacy of distrust in the Maldives runs deep. It will be one of the key things to overcome for whoever takes power after the country's first promised elections in 2008.
I have been a democratic leader all the past 28 years, and I want to be known as one who has introduced a liberal democracy to the Maldives.
There should be a graceful transfer of power, and we are working on that. We should be able to achieve that. If we don't achieve that, we have also failed.
Whether the changes in the Maldives are felt to be too slow or too quick, or even only on paper, the crunch will come at the elections. It will take all groups to create a peaceful transition from the past which doesn't leave anyone behind.